Mic check on. All right. All right. Now live. All right, cool. All right, let me find this thing. Where's this stuff? Oh man, there we go. Found it. All right. Make sure the mic's on. Hello, everyone. Yep, everything's working good. All right, time's almost done. All right. All right. All right. Add to stream. This one. Oh, not really that one. Ah, look at that. Magic. Let me just try to optimize that for the people at home. If I do that. All right. Live for 4 minutes. Cool. Well, hello, everyone. Those on the future viewing, this is Rap Raven, and this is the Betterment Broadcast. So those of you who don't know the format, we have a live show, talk about some stuff. People can jump in, give their thoughts. Doesn't matter if you don't see it now. We can always it's always recorded, so in future time you can actually get information and share and share and share. Hopefully we can come together to find betterment. All right, cool. So let's make sure this is working. Yep. So as you can see, this is the 41st show. So there'll be 41 shows, which is good. All right. Let me just put a smile in the form to make sure everything is still working and there's no blocking. Oh, maybe there you go. All good. All right, cool. So let's go through the formalities. After much research, I've unfortunately concluded that currently Black people are collectively inadequate. This is a much alarming surprise to many. To some, it's not that much of a surprise, but either way, it's a challenge that we have to rise to. So collectively, a group of people seen as a whole, that's what, so as a seen as a whole collectively, you know, when it comes to the group, we are inadequate, lacking the quality to deal with life and insignificant in for a purpose, right? So individually, Black people are doing fantastic, but unfortunately, when it comes to teamwork skills, we've got much to learn. So hopefully we can do that. We can train each other to be much better at teamwork. Very big problem, but nevertheless, raise to the challenge. Cool. So what's the next one? So we're going to invite people on as usual. Everyone's welcome to come on the show, but if you do, please don't forget the 4D values. I recommend use them on the show and maybe even in life when you interact with other Black people. And that is, make sure you have discipline, dedication, dignity, and discernment. These 4Ds here will hopefully allow people to interact better and find solutions at a much more rapid, fast rate, hopefully. All right, let's do that. Okay, so and also, if you can maybe use less, if possible, color, less language, and try to be more colorful in the sense of, you know, use descriptive language, which is very, very colorful, and not derogatory language, which is colorless. You know, I want to do that. At least, more so for these kind of shows, if possible. We definitely want to minimize anxiety and offense when we talk to Black people directly, if possible. I know sometimes it's the most challenging, it's not easy, but we shall try. All right, so what's the next one? Oh, this is not actually moving. What? There we go. Oh, there it is. It's moving now. Right. So these are some of the words that, you know, we want to replace the words on the left of your screen, which is here, with the words on your right. That might be a bit more helpful. Let's just experiment, see what happens there. It might work, might not. Who knows? All right, let me just make sure I've sent the link to the guys who requested them. I think I have. Yep, so I'm good. I can move on. Excellento. Cool. Now, what is Black Betterment? I hear no one say. Well, it's Black people helping Black people on Black issues for betterment. Never forget that. Very important thing. And that means that Black betterment is a lifestyle. So ultimately, this broadcast is promoting the lifestyle of Black betterment. You know, hopefully people practice this. You'll see more collective betterment from Black people as a whole. But who knows? We'll see what happens. Fantastic. All right. So this week, can Black love be with non-Black people? Can Black love be with non-Black people? All right. Very shortened way there. It sounds a bit odd when you say that. Maybe I should read it a different way. But anyway, can Black love be with non-Black people? So what is the purpose of this this message I hear no one say? Well, that's fine enough. Let me break it down. So as you know, I recommend that Black people, you know, in this world, there's a lot of images and information that might kind of work against their better judgment, might work against their best interest, might work against, you know, our kind of self-esteem, that kind of stuff, right? So, I recommend, if you could control, the content that you put in your head, your brain computer, then maybe, you could actually view life, definitely have more optimistic kind of stance and, help you rise to the challenge more. So I recommend that black people go out and try to follow, social Instagram and Facebook and Twitter and all this stuff of content creators who are, black betterment led, meaning they're trying to be constructive, they're trying to post information that is consistent, helpful, constructive, all those good words. That's what I do recommend. And I haven't necessarily reckoned any. I'm going to formulate a database. But as usual, when I follow some kind of like pages, and sometimes I'm always shocked, and the truth is, a lot of these pages I don't know who actually runs them. You see the name, you see one or two content, and you think this is actually quite constructive. We'll go over it. But fair enough, as I shall demonstrate. I'll just make sure my machine is hooked in. It's internet. It's funny. There we go. Yeah, as I was going through, there's a page. Big up to them and promote them, and I think they've got a YouTube channel as well. I assume. And their name of their page is Black Love. All right, and it looks like Black Love, which is a good concept. Something I definitely promote. Something that we don't really have too much of. Unfortunately, in certain aspects, in many aspects we do, but in certain aspects we need to really promote it better. But I was quite surprised that one of the images they post, and people say one, let it go, it's all good and all that good stuff. One of them was of a black woman getting married to a white guy. African descent, black woman, European descent, white guy. I believe this was based in America. I'm sure it was, and perhaps the page itself is based in America as well. It's hard to tell at times. But within this particular post of Black Love, they were showing obviously the woman in romance and that kind of stuff with her husband, children and talking about interracial marriage, and it wasn't legal and now it's legal. Let's celebrate and all that fantastic story stuff. Yeah, good. Now people in the world are going to get married. People are going to find people and they're going to live their life and do what they're doing. And for the most part, I'm going to tell people to let people do what they're doing, as you should, right? The only thing that seems to be a bit challenging, though, for me, is there is a page called Black Love, and there's a partner within there that is not black. So that's something that I kind of wanted to bring up on this kind of show. And the comments themselves were actually disabled. So I suspect many people would have had something to say about that, hence why the comments were disabled. And this is the thing, you kind of don't know the mindset of people who post these groups, and you always want to encourage people to make groups and don't disparage them and make sure people, feel supported and stuff. But I think when I say black people are collectively inadequate, I think this is actually kind of building into that. Like, surely there's a purpose in the concept of Black Love, right? As in, you see a value of black people, constructive black man with constructive black woman. This is the thought. Obviously, things change, whatever, right? And I don't know the how that you would get this kind of arrangement on a social platform promoting Black Love. And I think this is why one of the solutions and strategies I tried to push forward. Obviously, it's code of conduct and he's good. There's fantastic stuff here, but also seeing black people progressing more of a lifestyle. And the reason I say it's a lifestyle is kind of like having a vegan page, right? So people follow vegan pages called Vegan, Super Vegan, or Vegan Supreme. And then, there's one post that says how to kill ducks to eat them. You're like, oh, that's a bit. Is that vegan? I don't think it is. Is it a vegan duck? I mean, can you? No, I don't. Is that duck actually alive? So Doesn't that kind of go against what veganism says? And then people go, oh, it's only one. You've had 200 images there of how to make vegan noodles or whatever it might be, or vegan chicken, or all the vegan alternatives that's out there in the fantastic world. I go, just let it go. But I'm thinking, no, it surely, definitions and themes are important, especially when it comes to trying to correct inadequate behavior. That could be seen as inadequate in itself. So, this was most alarming when I saw this. I was thinking, okay, why would you have, a non-black person on a black love page? And someone will spin it and they'll say, no, well, actually, it just means as long as one black person is in love, that's black love. Yeah, and I think that's inappropriate behavior. I think that's very inadequate, and I feel it's that kind of behavior that contributes to black people really going behind. And I think it when I said a few weeks back, or every week to be honest, that individually black people are so skillful at so many, and there can be no denying it. But I think when it comes to working collectively, the only thing I see black people doing really well is subservient behavior and the ability to place other people's needs above our own. And I think that's cool when you're writing a fantasy novel and that good stuff. But I think in reality, I don't think that's necessary. I don't think the people who are most oppressed by many other people's historical decisions should be really operating this kind of way, where everyone is invited to the party, everyone can come, everyone's interpretation is correct. We don't need rules and regulations. I don't think that works for black people, but I could be wrong. Also, something we're going to move on to as well is a lot of these black love stuff, and this time we have to debate. We have to invite people from other communities to talk this one. A lot of these ones who I see some of these kind of like, you can have Europeans in a black love page. A lot of them are very pro, same gender loving, and that's a conversation we need to talk about. Like, same gender loving, same gender adopting children, and I think we definitely need to have a conversation about that. Let me say greeting to the family. I think we definitely need to talk about this. And I've always invited people on to discuss the angles, and I've made a grid for us to go over to try to work out what should be the focus of a community and what needs should we place first, if possible, right? And the claiming of words. So it seems to me now that when you talk about black love, you can be talking about one black person with a non-black person, and more often than not, it's a European, which is interesting. That there's probably something there. And then obviously, when you talk about black love, you're not necessarily talking about historical love in the sense of like, economics, family, structure, community, that kind of stuff. It's more so feelings and same gender and more contemporary kind of ideas. Very interesting, very interesting. It brings me to, maybe we need to start saying things traditional black love. Maybe we need that kind of hashtag where we're actually talking about, we are trying to fix and promote and help people understand constructive black man with a constructive black woman raising a constructive black family. Maybe we need to really pin that down. Maybe, I don't know. And obviously, the good thing about these shows, it's a discussion, so other people can come up with ideas. But it seems to me like, I follow many black social pages. So when I wake up in the morning or I'm walking at night, I can scroll and see constructive black betterment and black people doing really good things, opposed to me the destructive things I see sometimes, unfortunately. And sometimes tradition is very important. So when I realized that there's a whole load of same gender loving stuff going here. There's a whole lot of mixed relations going here, and this is all good and fantastic. But once again, when you place them in the context of pages called Black Love and all this kind of stuff, it then becomes somewhat confusing. And that's why I have to always talk about the whole concept of a vegan seeing people cooking a duck, And the answer is cooking a duck bad or wrong? Well, it is for the vegan, but generally that isn't the concept. The concept is this page is for vegans, so don't put ducks in it. And I think that kind of works for black people. And I think maybe us defining what things are might have to be like, as people can kidnap certain kind of concepts, like, the rainbow was utilized from a marketing standpoint for the LGBT, so maybe not using the rainbow you couldn't. Yeah, I think originally the Rainbow Coalition was something that black people coined as well, I think, but I can't remember. So maybe just having actual terms and hashtags just to make sure that black people understand what we're trying to get across. And that's traditional black love. Fantastic. Yeah. So there's this grid I bring up, but I haven't really gone over it, right? And it's something that when I talk to people, what I'm saying is a few weeks back we broke things down into error-prone behavior and high principle behavior. But from a black Betterment standpoint, I think it's necessary to now break down what is traditional for black people and what is contemporary. What has been tried and tested and lasted from a cultural standpoint throughout the many generations, and what is more modern-ish, newy kind of all that good, fantastic remix stuff. And I think, I think for me, a black woman and a black man being constructive with each other, I would put that in the era. I'll say high principle here, right about here. If you can't see the screen, not to worry. There's a grid and there's a word called high principle, and it's right about there. Now, traditionally, because they're men and women, I'll put it here. This is very traditional, very traditional. Now, if the equation now is mixed heritage, outside, well, then I'm not gonna disparage and say that's error prone. Let me say, okay, as long as they're good, that's contemporary. But we're actually here. We're trying to achieve here. Also, if a person is, same gender loving and there's two men and two women, well, let me put that here if they're very constructive. This is the deeper conversation that we probably need to have. Because I'm not here to just come and say that things are right and wrong. There's more of a platform for that where people who represent different ideas come together and we debate and we try to bring our cases across. And you're always welcome if you're a person who pushes these kinds of things on black people. These are natural things to you to come on and discuss it. But right now, traditional is here. So, I think what a grid like this allows us to do is when you have miscegenation and same gender loving, if those communities can define what is high principled amongst those practices, right? Like the high variance of that when it comes to black people progressing, then maybe they can also tell us within those communities what is negativity, what is error prone of those kind of interactions. So right now, when it comes to black betterment, I am pushing for traditional high principle behaviors, and that's something that we know is tried and tested. If anyone wants to talk about contemporary so-called high principle behaviors, then let them come forward and we can have discussions to see what might be better for black people to have as templates. Because once again, remember I told you that, as you know, black people struggle with so many stuff, so many stuff. And but there are certain things that black people are really good at, and one of them is being subservient. And I think black people have mastered that. And also one thing I think black people are very good at is a concept of benchmark rebranding. And I just need to find out that within these contemporary lifestyles, is any of them see the benchmark rebranding? So it's a good discussion to have. You'll see me jumping on people's platforms, bringing it up as I tend to do. Now, as tradition dictates, we have some fantastic videos for you. Most on topic. One's going to be slightly different, but it was sent to me by a fantastic contributor to the broadcast. But how should we start? Let's just, as usual. Okay, so with this topic, let me go back to the front page. We're talking about can black love be with non-black people? Can black love be with non-black people? Maybe I should add a few more words there, but whatever. All right. So what we're going to do, let's look at a first video now. This video, I'm going to click on full screen. I like that. This is in Israel. I remember a few years back, I'm not too sure. And in Israel, there is, as you might not know, there is a separation between Palestinians and sometimes defined as Arabs, part of the Arab collective, but Palestinians and Arabs in this case, or just Arabs in general in some cases. And then obviously Jews or Israelis, or maybe Jews is more correct. You have to ask the community what they feel. And yeah, this is a concept of how they deal with certain situations in their community. Let's have a sneak peek. Bon appetit, but impressed.
Rape by deception. An Arab man is to appeal his conviction of rape by deception in Israel after having consensual sex with a woman who thought he was a fellow Jew. Sabar Kishore, who denies pretending to be Jewish, was sentenced to 18 months in jail. But as RT's Paulus Leo reports, even couples who knowingly choose to enter into an interfaith relationship are ostracized.
This Jewish Jerusalem suburb is surrounded by Arab neighborhoods. And far from cultivating a culture of tolerance, vigilante-style Jewish patrol groups, calling themselves Fire for Judaism, stand watch outside the local shopping mall. Their mission? To prevent Arab men mixing with local Jewish girls. The municipality has created a 24-hour hotline where parents and friends can phone to rat on Jewish girls breaking this taboo. A specially trained team of counselors and psychologists is on standby to rescue them.
It's important to safeguard our traditions, culture, history and identity, because without this, who are we? From my experience, I can say that the chances for a healthy relationship between an Israeli Jewish woman and an Arab man are very, very low. It's because of the great differences between these two cultures.
The most recent case involves an Arab man who posed as a Jewish bachelor. A Jewish woman agreed to have sex with him, but after she found out he was an Arab and not a Jew, she filed a police complaint. The courts took the case so seriously that he's now being convicted of rape by deception and sentenced to 18 months in prison. The judge said he had an obligation to protect the public from sophisticated criminals who could lure innocent victims. But reactions to the verdict differ.
I think the idea, if the women want to do it, it's do it. No, they're no different. It's Arabic or no Arabic or something like this.
Usually Jewish girls don't go with Arab guys, unless it's a choice, you know. So there should be a choice. He didn't leave her the choice, but prison is too much, I think.
This is the way that this conflict is ruining our personal lives, that we cannot have relationships, that we cannot be just human beings.
Arabs make up a fifth of Israel's population, but relationships between Arabs and Jews are rare. Former Palestinian minister Ziad Abu Zayed says fights break out almost weekly in nightclubs and other public places over the issue. It's not religion, he says, it's racism.
There are Jewish gangs which are against any relations between Jewish girls and non-Jewish men. And they keep hunting Jewish girls, even those who can go out to a pub or to a restaurant or anywhere with an Arab guys, and threaten them and force them to break their relations with Arab guys.
In the 2 years Rami Rahib and Kelly Bentata have been together, they've never been physically threatened. He's Muslim, she's Jewish. But they're now thinking about leaving Israel because they say it's simply too difficult on other levels.
When my family found out, they were very adamant about cutting me off on every level for acting as a traitor to everybody and for being in Israel and making that choice.
Right now, Israeli parliamentarians are considering a law that will require prospective Israeli citizens to declare loyalty to Israel as a Jewish democratic state. Arab Israelis are furious. Most refuse to swear allegiance to a state they believe explicitly excludes and marginalizes them. Paul Islier, RT, Jaffa.
All right. So what you're seeing there is, you're seeing Jewish people, many of the Jewish people who are in Israel now, they come from Europe, Spain, and these kind of places. But all over, there's Jews from all over the world. And if you don't know, the Jewish people have gone to Israel and they govern Israel. And there's some, upsetting interactions between the Arabs and the Palestinians and the Jews. And, some people feel that, the Arabs have kind of got the short end of the stick and stuff. What you're noticing there is even with the last kind of thing there, you have some Arabs are asked to swear allegiance to this kind of stuff, and they don't feel that in the city that they live, they're getting the best kind of support, and then obviously there's some Jewish people who don't want them to mix with other people, and then laws are coming in that if you say you're this and you're not that, you get a couple months. Apparently, I mean, this is what's been reported. I'm sure some will jump in, but the facts of the document, the news broadcast isn't really up here for up to debate and stuff. It's more so just the mindset of a people, like recognizing the position you're in, recognizing who has the power, and recognize what's not in your best collective interest. You see, and what is it that you're trying to fight for? You're trying to fight to, be with the woman of the oppressing class and try to convince them that you're human and all the rest of it. Are you trying to dedicate time to actually get freedom for your people? These are interesting stuff. Let's now go to old school. I think it's the 50s, but maybe not. Who knows? Let's see. This is old school England. This is when miscegenation first was coming in on news, I guess. Let's say this. Rewind.
There are 190,000 colour people in this country.
That's right.
People say that the colour bar is beginning to fade.
Is it?
But I wonder if it is. I think if we were honest with ourselves, that we'd admit it would be a bit of a shock if we were told that our sister or daughter was going to marry a coloured man. With me.
Let's rewind that. So this is basically the 50s in England, and he's been openly true. Like it was a bit of a shock if his daughter, sister, whatever, it was to find a black man, whatever it is. And let's just rewind that again. They're very open in news back in those days. Now, not so much, but
Sister or daughter was going to marry a coloured man.
Oh yeah.
With me here is Mr. Jackson from Jamaica.
With his English wife Olive and their 3-year-old son John. An example of an extremely happy and successful mixed marriage.
So he referred to that as a mixed marriage, not a black marriage, but a mixed marriage. That's how it was defined there.
How long have you been married?
5 years.
And how long had you known each other before you did get married?
3 months.
3 months. So this individual came to England, met a woman so fantastic was she. 3 months, marriage. Let's go.
Well, did you discuss all the disadvantages of a mixed marriage in this country?
I don't think they did.
Well, we didn't talk about it much, really. We both knew that
I think you should have.
there's a certain amount of prejudice to be combated, but we felt prepared to deal with it as it came along, as best we could.
But what sort of prejudice have you come up against?
Well, to be honest, I must say that we haven't faced any real direct prejudice which you could pin it down and say such and such a thing is prejudice, I mean, you've had people staring at you in buses and things like that, but I don't suppose it's prejudice. I suppose it's bad manners. I'm not quite sure whether it's the way.
No, it's probably prejudice.
Welfare state or prosperity that's responsible for that, but it's just bad manners,
And you've no fear that John is going to be prejudiced over here?
I think he might meet with a few little indifferent things, but he'll have to be trained in such a way to get on top of them. See, that's our job, more or less, to get him in the right frame of mind, the right proper breeding that he can overcome the little difficulties which he may.
See, with many black people and stuff, especially people who are open universal lovers and stuff, a lot of them don't see prejudice. They don't want it to define them, which is good for them. That's whatever world you want to operate, good for you. Do it then. All right. So that was just a brief thing. Let's go to Papua New Guinea. If this even works, we'll see a bit of this. So this, if you don't know, there are people in Papua New Guinea who are legally registered as black. They have Afro-coid features. The history from Africa is much more of an ancient one, and they settled in the land of Papua New Guinea, these kind of places, years ago, but they still retain the black feature, thus then being registered as black people. Let's have a sneak peek of this back in the old days. All right. That's not the one. This is the one. Rewind. All right, cool. There you go. Just some parts of miscegenation and some of the laws and all that good stuff. So we're gonna do a quick detour just to talk about on and off code behavior. Then we'll move back to can black love be with non-black people. So just a contributor sent a video to myself and asked me what's my views on it, and let's have a sneak peek at this video and see if we can try to codify this behavior. Let's go. Rewind.
First.
Tell
me you're single without telling me you're single. I'll go first.
What?
Now, please forgive the colorful language that's gonna, but this is for market research purpose. If there's any children cover, there is.
Y'all, it ain't no hope for nobody then. Cause bro, how the fuck are you single? I guarantee you, if you step outside, the bitches will come running. Some dudes too. Cause I got excited when I saw your face. If you look in the dictionary, it's gonna be a picture of your face, and the definition is gonna be masterpiece. God said fuck everybody else and took his sweet ass time on you. That's why we got so many ugly motherfuckers in the world, because you canceled them out. If my wife don't cheat on me with you, I'm gonna divorce the shit out of her, because she gotta be crazy as shit. Dude, you look like mwah. Like, stop capping. It ain't no way.
All right, so that's one of the memes. Now, I'm not too sure if the gentleman himself made this or someone pieced it together. But obviously, this is problematic behavior. Having a a white European man, in your video having a black child, obviously using foul language is one thing, trendy and all that, but just really just idolizing and worshiping, European features, whether he understands it or not. This is obviously problematic, and I think this is something we can dub as off-code behavior. And I think we need to train, some of the youth about I'm assuming this is comedy. Obviously, the different levels of comedy, and there's probably comedies like the new age comedy, which I probably won't understand because, I'm a relic and that kind of stuff. But I think we need to maybe just give some advice about this kind of stuff. I think, by all means, tell this kind of joke. If you want to, do this kind of like worship, maybe you could replace the European gentleman with a black guy, and preferably maybe a dark-skinned black man, maybe someone like Wesley Snipes in his prime, that kind of stuff. Maybe, I don't know, hopefully the joke will still resonate well. But just something that we should maybe be conscious of. And there was another video I wanted to push forward as well that actually correlates more so with the can black love be with non-black people. And I haven't got that. Maybe you guys could find and just post a link in the group. Basically, there's a comedian in America somewhere, and he did some kind of joke where he said, "Oh, I'm with white women, so I can have black babies with them. I do love black people because I'm with white women to make black babies." This kind of interesting maths that they come up with. This is another problematic stuff. Very problematic at so many levels. But the level we'll enter is you don't talking about having black children with non-black women and stuff. That's not necessary. It's probably best you just mention black women in that kind of order. And I think there was comedians or maybe normal TikTokers who would then take that, show an image of them and their white girlfriend and their mixed black child, whatever, and then just kind of like this is the latest trend or whatever. I think that's off-code behavior as well. I don't think that can work in black people's betterment. I think we need to really work on that kind of stuff. I mean, all this stuff is shrouded in low self-esteem, whether they know it or not. So this is a similar thing, but talking about off-code behavior is very important. But let me click, and so voila, we go back to can black love be with non-black people? So for those who didn't catch the first instance of why we're here, I shall go over one more time because I'm kind. And that is, I recommend people follow pages dedicated to black betterment, black love, black economics, anything where black people are being constructive and trying to do better, because obviously life is very challenging for black people, as many people don't know, but those who do know understand. And I came across, this page I follow. I don't know the background, I don't know who runs it, but they had, a black woman married to a white guy, and they had the title Black Love. And I'm like, I don't know if that qualifies. But then, some people are remixing and say, well, no, if one black person finds love, that's black love. I think I reject this claim. I think this is counterproductive, and I think it defeats the purpose. And I think, there is a value in black people loving black people, especially under the current systems and the histories that many people don't bother studying. And that's why I tried to show you things from the past and this kind of stuff. But there was one more thing. Did I even put this one? I did. I'm glad I put it in. So, as I was saying a couple of weeks back, and I haven't got around to doing it, we talked about the concept of racial whitening. Now, for those who don't know what racial whitening is, I shall read it out because, that's what it's there to do. And so racial whitening is ideology used as a solution to the Negro problem. So many people of European descent in history, they always saw black people being a problem, and many factors, and so they will say the Negro problem. And the problem is more so like, what do you do with black people? What do you have to feed them? What if they become powerful? What if they own land? What if they, what if they start progressing? This could work against white supremacy and white people having power. It was a problem that many Europeans were most upset with, all over the empires and colonies of Europeans. And so that was a Negro problem. So racial whitening encompasses the perception of individuals as being white in relation to their position in class system. Supporters of the whitening ideology believe that the Negro race would advance culturally and genetically, or even disappear totally, with several generations of mixed breeding between white people and black people. So just to break that down, they're saying that, one way to deal with black people is to have them be with white people, maybe more so the lower class white people, and have them kind of like have after a couple of generations have them not exist anymore phenotypically, and also have them really believe that white is better, and hopefully that way we'll remain economically strong, and black people won't be able to go against the domination that was presented back in the olden days. So this was the ideology that many white supremacists, or just white people in governments, really push. The ideology inserts the belief that the white Aryan race, as they called themselves back then, was superior to all other cultures and would inevitably whiten the inferior race's blood. This was a thing they used to push. I don't know where they got the information from, but they ran with it. And then racial whitening is also a process used to control non-white indigenous people's economic ownership. So an example would be like, sometimes in America you might see Native Indians who look European, and as I've shown you in Australia, Australians who look European. There's another way of control, like have them breed themselves out, and then let me turn my alarm off. Have them breed themselves out, sorry, and then hopefully people who look European, who dress Aboriginal, can then own the resource, and that way it comes back to European, you can control it. That kind of domination. You would think, how do they think of this stuff? But they really do. They sit down in a room and really write this stuff down, and they practice it. Black people are naive to this because black people believe the world is really, if I don't think that way, no one else would. But you need to kind of read. If you read, you'll find out. And there's a reason why certain things are happening. So technically, racial whitening equals black hate. That's just to make it easier. So when you hear racial whitening, it means black hate. So naturally, sometimes there's words that don't exist, so we have to invent them. So I'm pushing the concept of racial blackening. The word doesn't exist, unfortunately. So as a community, I think we need to make it. But then there's a concept of, well, what is racial blackening? So here's what I've pushed forward. Maybe we can discuss this and see if we can refine it. But at the moment, I'm thinking racial blackening is, or blackening is used as a solution to anti-blackness, black inferiority, and collective black inadequacies, and colorism. All right. Racial blackening contributes to black economics, black generational wealth, and black culture ownership. Racial blackening is used to promote unity among all black people collectively. Racial blackening is one of the first steps in practicing constructive black love and constructive black family. Right. And then at one it says racial blackening equals black love. So racial whitening equals black hate, while racial blackening equals black love. Now, a lot of people say, why do you have to talk about color and race and this kind of stuff? Because people who were in better positions of power did, and they formed the world in a way that most black people always struggle. So that's why you kind of have to have code of conducts and lifestyles and practices to kind of change that. And I'm pushing forward the concept of racial blackening. So it is, to tackle racial whitening. Now, one thing we have to think of, and I mentioned this before, when you talk about racial whitening, what happens is historically, when you look at the word, the N-word, the nigger word, right? Historically, Europeans call black people niggers because they hate black people. And then what happened is black people started, embodying this and then calling ourselves niggers. More so from America, but it's gone around the world. So you can see how the psychology works. So historically, Europeans wanted to breed out black people in some dimension, and control the wealth and control the economics and make sure that money never circulated in the black community. Black people didn't own nothing, and any kind of black people power would have to be with white people. This kind of stuff. This was what was written into law and written into practice. Now that isn't there anymore. So, using discernment, if that isn't anymore, but people are still practicing the same thing, what does that mean? Especially when you look at black people still being collectively inadequate. Is this another form of that kind of self-niggering where you just you plant the seed and the tree grows and then it takes care of itself, that kind of stuff. I do wonder if that's what goes on, in some of these kinds of stuff. So that is racial blackening, and that's a nice, fantastic picture of black people. And I always let you know that, just as a reminder that these are all the people I came across who are black politicians, and they all have European wives. So nothing wrong with having a European wife, not at all. But when you see patterns, maybe something's going on. Because remember, black people are what? What are black people? Collectively inadequate. So we have to have codes of conduct to make sure that we're not falling for the okie doke, as we tend to do every single time. That's right, every time we fall for the okie doke. So let us now discuss. Now that is my presentation. I tried to keep it under 47 minutes, which I have. Well done to me. Pound the back. Let me see if I can find my link. Give me 17 seconds to travel through this stuff. But many things to talk about. You're always welcome to jump in. But the discussion is, can you have black love with a non-black partner? You know, can you have, historically, if a person has never been registered as black in any capacity, and they don't register as black in any capacity, can they be a concept of black love? Or do we need to get with modern times? Is this the modern times connection us where we need to start including black people loving non-black people as black love? It's always good to hear people's naysayers and all that good stuff. So if you've got an opinion, jump in. I'm going to post a fantastic link for those who want to get involved, but like I said, 2 topics today. One, obviously, can black people love a non-black person? That we call black love. And also, what is to be done about self-hate on social media? That kind of stuff. These are 2 topics that we can cover. But the link is out there. If anyone wants to jump in, by all means, click, and jump in. But I've done my fantastic 47-minute rant. Now it's up for the forum. Hopefully, remember, come in, start conversation. The things we talk about is for the future generation to look back and check our videos. But what let's not forget that what we're trying to do, if possible, is we have one thing. No, let's see what they say. They say, no, it's just love, but black love. Okay, no, it's just love, but not black love. Very true, branding. So, yep, that's just love, but it's not black love. Okay, we have Brother Kel. Welcome, Brother Kel. Always a contributor to the Betterment Broadcast. Very important contributor. How's it going?
I'm all right, Brother Raven, man. Very interesting show, once again, as always.
Thank you, brother. So, Brother Kel, what is your thoughts? You probably not, I don't know if you follow anything, but I do follow many black love, so-called black love pages, just to keep up to the date with the black love universe. And there was some surprise where one of the pages promoted a black woman with a non-black person. Well, a white person to be particular. That might even be more important to actually mention. Is it possible to have black love with a non-black person, Brother Kel? Do you think?
I don't think you can have black love with a non-African person, and you can't have it with an unsynchronized African person either.
Oh wow!
It's kind of obvious, really. It's a contradiction. It's not going to work out. On many levels. It's what was very interesting as well. I was watching the videos, and it was the Israeli and Arabs against each other. And what was very interesting is how the Israelis were very strategic in keeping Arab procreating with their women, and they will go to extreme lengths to keep that curriculum intact. That's very interesting. That is, man, very interesting.
Very. I think historically, other people groups, dominating people groups, they understand how power works and they understand how maintenance work. And I think those same people groups will create narratives and stories that tell a difference in the world that other dominated groups will feed into. And once again, it keeps many groups in a form of ignorance and in a state where you don't see any kind of betterment or owning of any resources, any kind of progression or kind of, second generation, anything really. And I think, this is something that many black people have to be aware of. What we will be fighting about is, love has no color and this kind of stuff. And I think you were one of the first to talk about the economics of relationships and this kind of stuff. But yes, we're seeing that outside the community, other communities are understand this and they're very strategic in how they try to keep the status quo and how they keep resources and keep, I guess, a control of the things they have. Very interesting, very interesting. So what? Go ahead, brother. It's your time. No. I was going to ask you a question, but jump in. Say what you're going to say.
What I was going to say is that you see the black love, brother. It's very confusing,
Okay.
right? Because what is black love? You know, that's what the youth are gonna ask themselves.
Good question.
You know, but at the same time, we can ask what an African love is,
Ah.
and we have, brother, manuscripts, blueprints of how the African love was. You know, the African type of democracy. How, for example, if you wanted to marry an African woman and the African wanted to marry an African man, that the families would sit down, both families being very politically educated when it came to developing economics, developing tactics of protecting certain borders from enemies. You know, they were very strategic. You know, the women, they were taught how to, you know, how to be politically scientific, as well as how to know how the motherhood strategies, as well as how to be very sexual as well. You know, the men also, they were taught, you know, manhood and how to understand the science of the woman. But the thing is, bro, is like the black love is very confusing, because what is black love? You know, the youth gonna have to ask themselves, you know, what is black love? But we know what an African love is, and we have books and manuscripts to create these types of curriculums for the youth.
Right. So I would say that maybe in the diaspora, it's about taking these manuscripts and remarketing them and branding them to brothers who are distant from that, and taking the best of these kind of ideas and really formulating them for I guess black boys and black girls, black men and black women, you know, a marketing campaign to you know, rebrand what Black Love is. Because at the moment, if I'm following a page for Black Love and I'm showing a black woman with a white man, I think that's false advertisement, surely. But once again, I think what we tend to focus on is the fairy tale-ness of this concept of love, not necessarily the economics, the generational wealth, the protection, you know, the culture, and I guess, you know, the far-seeing direction that you want to put your community in. If you, especially if you recognize your community are going through challenges. I think what was interesting about one of the videos I placed in Papua New Guinea one, they kind of brushed past it, but the European lady, the white lady, was saying that, oh yes, you know, there's some political stuff that we're not going to really bother on. But you know, those political stuff is the reason why her black husband is making half of what her white husband would have made. Very, you know, just understanding how the system works, and generally, you being with a non-black person isn't like you know, a guaranteed you know, leg up in society, whatever it might be. If anything, it could actually contribute more to challenges. You know, but this is something we can be discussing a few times. But you know, more importantly, I always say the most you know, when it comes to black betterment, constructive black man, constructive black woman is very important. You know, and establishing what that constructiveness is very important. You know, and that's why I try to have these shows with all the most constructive minds out there to formulate codes of conduct that we can put as templates for black people to follow, so we can guarantee more often than not a better outcome for black people collectively.
I think as well, brother, that the youth, right, they're gonna have to, and now we're in that era where like you can research on the internet, although it'd be better for them to read books. That's the proper enlightenment. But when you look at it on a level, bro, like for example, the ancestors of the Europeans, right, all of them were black people. The ancestors of the Asians, black people again. The Native Americans, black people. The Middle Easterns, black people. And these black people, they did extraordinary things in the lands what they're in. They brought all these civilization, all these curriculums, right? But yet still, they hate them to the extent that they'll erase them, these extraordinary black people from history. Well, then why would the youth or black people of today will think that they're going to accept them, the non-African people, when they don't even accept their black ancestors? You know, we have to ask ourselves these questions. Like, if they're not going to accept these extraordinary black ancestors, what gave them things, what makes you think that they're going to accept you?
Yeah, very welcome, Bay, Sister Bay.
Okay.
How you doing, Sister Bay?
So, Sister Bay, just if you've missed, today's topic is, can black love be with non-black people? And if you haven't, the reason why it comes from is, as I do recommend black people try to follow social networks that empower black people and give constructive black imagery. And I came across one of the pages known as Black Love. And in the Black Love page, there was images of a black lady married to a white man. And the whole post was, thank goodness that this can happen, and interracial marriage is now legal in USA. And, this happens, and, have a good life, that good stuff. But the reason why it came to my attention is because it was on a page known as Black Love. So then the question was, is it possible for a black person to practice black love with a non-black person? Is it, Bay? Sister Bay?
You know what I think they probably mean by it is meaning that the black person is loving. I think that's probably what they mean by it. But most people who talk about black love mean two black people. They don't mean that the black person is just able to love it. White people knowing what they've done collectively to black people in the last 500 years. Maybe that's what the person means by it. That a black person, this black woman, has found a place of forgiveness and is able to not judge that white partner on their ancestors and on the the context of their character. Maybe that's what they mean by it. I know.
Yeah,
I mean,
well, like I said, with me, I think personally, when it comes to trying to train black people how to be more adequate collectively, I think this is inappropriate behavior. I think it's very confusing, and I feel that if you have a page called Black Love, I think we as a collective should establish, I think it's in our best interest to establish a concept of black love as a black man with black woman, and anything else is mixed love or love, or a new age word that people want to use. But if we start doing this kind of like, however you feel is something is, then usually this works against black people, because black people tend to always get tricked with this whole integration, betterment, sharing concept, and usually are left with less than they started with. So,
but what about the concept of, because it's got 800, nearly 1 million followers, looking at the amount of followers it's got. What about the concept of, because I think it's very fashionable to use the term black love, but it's like black business when you've got one black person and one white person, and they'll still claim that that business is black owned when it's only owned by one black person and the other person's white. It's the same principle.
I see where you're coming from. I would say, though, unfortunately, and maybe I'm wrong, people have to correct me, with black people, especially in the diaspora, being trained to not actually run businesses but to be workers, I feel that it's probably much more easier for a black person to find a black lover than it is for a black person to start their own business in certain kind of corporate world. Could be wrong though, So I think I understand that there's setbacks, but I take your point. Like, is it a black business if it's co-owned by a non-black person? And that could be a topic we could bring up. I think we did talk about, when circulating your money, what should be the characteristics that make a company more favorable. And I guess that could be one, like, a company that has one black owner versus one black plus one non-black. Which one, maybe the first one would be more favorable. Who knows? This is, like I said, it's about us as a community getting on code and writing these codes. But
Oprah's by any chance?
Say again?
Is this Oprah? Because like Oprah's got a YouTube channel called Black Love.
Yes.
It's got a lot of followers. Is it?
This is it. I don't know her direct involvement, but I do know that on their YouTube page it mentions being on the own network at some point. So
it's Oprah.
So yeah. Now, obviously, like I said, the thing is, with mainstream kind of like black center, the black owned things, like so-called black owned things, there's always going to be a universal concept, and and always going to have bridges to allow new ideas and new kind of things. And I just think definitions are important. I do think definitions are important, and that's why when I mention black people being collectively inadequate, I talk about the concept of how vegans are not collectively adequate in the sense of if you had a vegan page, you will never get the best way to kill a duck. It wouldn't, and no one would say, well, let's just have one of them, and that's okay because there's so many other vegan recipes. Let's just have one duck and then everything else vegan. They say no, as a principle, no duck should be killed on here. We're not saying ducks is good or bad. We're saying that this particular area forum is dedicated to the lifestyle of veganism, and I think that's why sometimes definition might be important. That's why it isn't just this. Many of these Black love pages, and there's, I'm not saying yay nay about this, but many of them are same gender loving as well, where they promote like 2 Black dads adopting 3 Black daughters, this kind of stuff. And this is something that. Go ahead, brother Carl. You say.
Brother Raven, right? You see, when it comes to the parents, right, the African parents, right, because you always use this famous word that we are inadequate, right?
Collectively,
they are afraid, brother, to teach the younglings at a very young age the African science of how a Black man and a Black woman supposed to choose each other. And how it's supposed to look like each other. They're very afraid to do that, right? And this is a big problem because we can all talk about these topics, right? But at the same time, the root of it, my brother, is the parents. If you go to like the parents, for example, the 80s, the 70s, right? 60s as well, I'll say, they're very afraid to teach their children about the African science of how a relationship's supposed to be. It's almost as if like they're going to have a heart attack or they're going to be in prison. And we need to get past that barrier, if that makes any sense.
No, I hear that. Very true. And you're right. And I think from my experience of debating publicly and this kind of stuff, anytime you mention Black love or Black economics or anything where Black people take time to fix the challenge of the past and try to maintain a slot of betterment for themselves in this world, you get tremendous pushback. And, also from Black people as well, who's been trained in the art of kumbayasm, this kind of stuff. So, yeah, it is most challenging. But that's why I think we kind of need to come up with modern day PDFs and kind of sites that help train parents in concepts of Black betterment, concepts of old traditional African ways that work for people, and ways to just to have an inward solution based system. You see, and I think it's the only way if we don't do that, then whatever is at the moment will continue, and that's why you're going to see. Now, what I was going to get to was one, if Black love can't mean. Because when I was bringing up the LGBT and the miscegenation and stuff, if Black love now is going to mean LGBT and it's going to mean miscegenation as well in some form, then maybe we need to have new tags as in traditional Black love. And the reason I use the term traditional Black love is if we look here at this diagram, why is it not refreshing? There we go. Yeah, at this diagram here. Many weeks back, a few weeks back, I spoke about error-prone behavior and high-principle behavior. And in order for a community to thrive, you need to have balance, definitely, but more so that we want to lean towards high-principle behavior whenever possible. But obviously, sometimes with new contemporary ideas, miscegenation and LGB interactions kind of stuff, many of them will argue, well, no, this is how we are, and we can be high-principled in our behaviors. So I do ask people who practice these contemporary ways to define for me what is the error-prone behaviors in those ways and what are the high principle in those ways. So we could just put it on the board. But I'm saying that constructive Black man with a constructive Black wife here, raising constructive Black children, I'm putting it up here, like very high principle in this area, yeah? And teaching about the value of looking after Black women and Black boys and defending Black women, very high principle. Understanding the trying second generation wealth, try to give back and all that good stuff. This is how. So all the other lifestyles that I'm not really aware of, they'll have to define in their contemporary lifestyles the error-prone behavior and the high principle behavior. So is it error-prone in the say the LGBT community to go to children and teach them about drag queens and drag this stuff within nurseries? Is that error prone or is that actually high principle? This is actually a very high principle in our community that children learn about these sexual things, age whatever they are, 5, 6, 7, whatever, I don't know. Right. So it's these are the questions I would like to ask them. So can I ask them if we're interacting with people who are really pushing these kind of ideas, whatever? So hopefully we can extend the the link to people who actually do understand some of these things, and they can educate us on the science of them.
It's going to be very tricky, Brother Raven, as I said, because as what Sister Betty was saying in that, right, with the old platform, is that, brother, the word black, right? It's very marketable and used effectively by non-Africans. Khalid Abdul Muhammad, a great Pan-Africanist. He was from the member of Nation of Islam. He's passed away years ago, right?
Yes.
And he made it clear that black is consciousness, color, culture, and connection to the creator, right? Now, a lot of us, brother, the youth, do not understand the concept of black. Do you understand? So because of that, then that is very confusing. Whereas if you relate it as what you says, traditional black love, i.e. African science of how a black woman and a black man's supposed to be, right? This is where things are going to be more clearer, because if you notice, right, black is marketable.
Yes.
It's cool to be black. It's, you can make money off it and etc., right? And as long as we are seeking approval of non-African people, we'll go along with it. Do you understand? So don't you think that we have to start with the principles for the youth of how African marriages, needs to be? For example, when it comes to the African woman, you cannot marry her unless her father, her uncle, and her family are there. So she understands that there's security, that if he messes up, right, then he's going to have to deal with the community. These practices are no longer practiced amongst African people no more. In the religion of Islam, you'll find it, okay, you have to go through like a wali, you know what I mean? Like a person who can vouch for you, etc., right? And the woman can sit down and, the father's there, or her, guardians there, security for her. But this is no longer there now. The black woman can be with any black man who's not Pan-Africanized, and he can ill-treat her and stuff, right? So that's what I'm saying, like the science of the African way, how it used to be, that needs to be implemented for security for the African woman, as well as for the African man as well, to produce traditional, real African love.
You know what, mate?
Go ahead, mate.
What it is, I've had a look at that page. So you look at it, and it's exactly what I thought it is. If you look at it, it's saying that underneath, if you look at the hashtags, it says black people finding love. Yeah. Do you see what I mean? So it's talking about, obviously we live in a white world, don't we? So, and obviously, in America, you've got a considerable amount of black men locked up in jail or dead. Yeah. So they don't have enough equal numbers of black men and black women to be together. Yeah. And then for the ones that want to, do you know what I mean? The ones that are not black men that are not available. So they're probably putting this up like you've actually managed to find love. Yeah. And they put this Mildred and Richard, who were fighting to be together. And even if you look, Black Joy Matters, Loving Day, historical moment. So I think that's what it's trying to say. And that's why you got and if you look at it, they've got the mixed race child there, because obviously they have the one drop rule in America where they believe that a mixed race child is black. Yeah. So, and for many people, they're going to be black people who see that family as a black family, because the majority of people in the family are people of color or black people of black origin, and you've got just a random white person there. So that's what I'm getting from what they're trying to say.
Interesting, very good point. What I did notice though, that they blocked comments, so people couldn't actually comment on it. So I suspect that somewhere along the line they were aware that many people from African America and the African diaspora might have some kind of objections to the ruling, to the definition. But like I said,
a lot of likes, 30,000 likes.
Well, like I said, it seems to be the only post that can't be commented on. So
yeah, for obvious reasons.
Yeah. Obviously, there's a lot of the big debate around such stuff. Good info from both Betty doing the research and obviously Brother Cal talking about ancient African norms and practices. We're just gonna.
But I think this is the problem that you get. This is like with the one drop rule and the idea that a child that is born of a black and white person that is just black. This is the problem you get. Because when you say to people, and I've come across mixed race people like this myself, that if you're teaching them that they're just black and they grow up with just their white mother, their black father's nowhere to be seen for various reasons, and they're hearing all the bad things that white people have done collectively, there's a reaction to that. Because all they have is their white mother to look after them and their black family's not there. So if you say that they're just black, yeah, and that they're not white, yeah, then they get angry because they say, well, my black family father's not anywhere to be seen, you know, and then they feel like they're being taught to hate themselves. Because I've seen that reaction. I had a friend that was mixed race. His dad wasn't around because his dad was killed. But he was only raised by his white mother, and the mixed race history teacher really hated his white side, and was just like the one drop rule believed he was a black man. And my mixed race friend ended up hating the guy because he felt like all he taught him was that white people were bad, even though the only thing that my friend has was his white mother. And this is the problem. When you say that mixed race people are just black, then you're gonna get, how can you accept mixed race people as black, yeah, and just black, but you want to condemn the relationships that create them?
Sister Bay gives some inside there. Now, before you speak on Bay, this would like to welcome. Is this Sister Rain? Is that Sister Rain there? She Rain?
Greetings, everybody. Greetings.
Welcome. So I don't know how much you've got, but just today's topic is: can Black love be with non-Black people? Everyone's giving their perspective, and I've broke down how I came across these kind of concepts, searching through forums and social groups that confess Black love. And the question is: can Black love be between one Black person and one non-Black person? Is that something that works for Black Betterment and not so much? Any opinions on this, Sister Rain, at all?
Okay. Well, the reason I called in, because I was just going to listen tonight, but I called in because there is a topic that I don't feel that is often discussed, and that's around fertility treatment. And through research and third-party conversations, there is a cohort of Black women who are kind of reaching the menopausal radar. Some early, some there's that gap when you get to a certain age where your egg count, your eggs become less, and the chances of you having children are less than when you were, say, 16, 14, whatever and whatnot.
Right. Yes.
So through conversations that I've had with some parties, it appears that the route some women are taking is to go down the fertility treatment route. And there is, in the UK, from the channels that have been approached, there is no Black sperm in the fertility clinics. So that is leaving a lot of women, say Black women, for example, who want a Black baby, and I'm using the word in this context, having to look at sperm, who are desperate to have children, looking at sperm of the men of different races because there are no Black sperm. So the question I'm posing, and some are actually going internationally to get that sperm selection that they want, which can create, complications, whatever and whatnot. Now, there is adoption that some people are taking up. Foster care is another thing that people are taking up.
Yes.
But another thing as well is that okay, Sister Betty touched on, black men in America being in prison. There are a lot of black men in the prison system or pipeline in the UK as well.
Yep.
And also, there are a lot of black men who are wasting a lot of their sperm because they don't understand the importance of their own sperm.
Mm.
So with that also, there's another point that I was going to make in regards to, the sperm is basically going elsewhere. So it's like, where is that sperm going? Because earlier on, I think you mentioned, black love. There's a lot of men who like to spread love, but that's not necessarily meaning that the relationships, and I say that in inverted commas, that they are developing are sustainable and are exemplary, where the children who are being born are black facing then. And also what I find as well is that this is going off a little bit, but even in some movements where some people have brought their children up in particular movements, there is still the risk of black movements, or, black power movements, whatever and whatnot. Some children still end up losing their virginity to people of other races, even though their parents have taken them down the stages of knowing themselves, being around certain environments where there's a promotion of black knowledge, black thought, etc. There's still a steering off, probably because of experiences and or influences in the media, or just unconscious advertisements, whatever it is, the music, whatever it is. I'm saying that you can do all that you can to grow your child up to be very aware of themselves, and then they still might steer. But my main thing is the fertility argument, or not even argument, but the fertility topic. And that is that there are a lot of women who are approaching, menopausal, that radar, don't have children, are kind of desperately wanting children, and the availability of finding a secure man who will provide, etc., is quite sparse.
Yes. So let me, very, very good point there, as usual, Sister Rain. So I mean, it's quite a predicament you brought up there. And I would say this: I assume if a woman is going to find a donor, that she then will be raising the child on her own. Is that correct?
Perhaps it could be, depending on. Well, it depends on the individual,
Yeah, but let's go with that. Let's go with that for now. Just to open up the discussion in the sense of let's go with the console. It's very interesting predicament you say, because at one end you have this notion of many black men who just seem to spread their seed and not necessarily look after the kids and disappear into the wind for decades upon end, right? And then you have this other one where there is no sperm donation, and it seems very interesting that here we have men who just be throwing their sperm everywhere, and then there are women who can't find any sperm. So this is something that we need to really address as a community. Then, if there are women who are looking to just have children but can't find black men, and we have black men who just seem to impregnate hundreds of women and disappear into the sunset, why are these people not meeting each other? It seems like they're kind of in the same world, right? One just wants a child, the other just wants enjoyment for the day or whatever it might be.
But also,
sorry,
Brother Raven, as women and men get older, especially women, their priorities change. So where like in your 20s or your teens, 20s, you might be into the partying and the whatever. When you start getting to certain ages and stuff, your your options become, or the things that you want, your options become lesser, but also the things that you want become more defined. So the older and older you get, sometimes the ideal man that you're looking for may not exist, and you're having to then go or look towards other, places where it might not be the person that you want, but at the same time, it's the choices are quite complicated, which then leads to complications.
especially in countries. It's like that that girl, Shameless Maya. She's Filipino, black. I think her dad's black and her mum is Filipino, and she was married to a black man first. The marriage didn't work out, so now she's married a white guy. But she talked about being disappointed. She wanted that black love and everything. And she's like 30, she's like 39 now, and she's having her first baby with her. And I think the husband's like 26 or something like that. So just like Rain's saying, what I've noticed that not all black people that are in relationships and not all black women that are with people that are not black are really there because they want to be. It's because they couldn't find a black man in time. And the women have, like Sister Ray says, women don't have all the time that men have. Some men are having kids until their 70s. Some women just got to take, right. Unless you're prepared to go to like the Caribbean or Africa, some black dominated country, and spend all your money trying to find that black love. But not everyone's prepared to do that.
But doing that, you don't have to spend money. Sorry, Brother Kel. It's funny because I think you don't always have to spend a lot of money going to Africa, going to the Caribbean. But some women do have, I don't want to say hang-ups, but it's like they leave the openness a bit too late for whatever reason. Whereas, and what I find as well is that there are some people who are quick to condemn you when you've had a child young, but then as they've gotten older and like they've probably followed the career path, they're at an age now where they want children, and they're actually kind of, I don't want to say, what word could I use apart from jealous? But there is a bit of animosity because now they want what you've got, which they would have probably mocked beforehand. So it's a real funny dynamic discussing all of this stuff, and I think it's because there's so much confusion out there. There's so much curiosity and so much confusion. Brother Kel.
What I was going to say is another thing, the traditional black love, as what Brother Raven has put out, is part of African traditional love is being in a polygynous marriage. Now, this is very controversial because a lot of our black African family, because of we're in the West and etc., seem to ignore this topic, that the reality of African traditional love is that the man would marry more than one woman. And I believe that's a solution that the African woman of today needs to go back. She needs to go back to the traditional way, is that you may have to share your husband with 6 women. And the reason why that is that in ancient traditional ways, and that is that when the enemies would be killing a lot of the men, that was the solution, as well as building up economics and wealth. So the black woman doesn't need to go to a European institution and ask the Europeans, can you give me a sperm? She can go to a Pan-Africanist community, and they're everywhere as well, and sit down, and she can demand, as well as he can demand with the community, that if I'm going to be in a polygynous marriage, I want to make sure the economics, that I'm given this amount of wealth when you pass away, that the children have this, and do it the traditional way. I just wanted to touch upon what Sister Rain was saying about a lot of she's saying there's a lot of children that was raised pro-black, as she says, and there's been a lot of strays in the marrying other or dating. That has always been, sister, especially in the African continent, ancient African continent, that a lot of the Africans, they would be marrying the Asians and the Middle Eastern. Some of it was to stop wars. Some of it was to, keep a peace treaty. However, the difference is that the children was always raised with concrete traditional ways of African history. Now, some of us, sister, have been raised like that. I'm coming from a Pan-Africanist background, right? And some of us haven't strayed. But at the same time, it's to do with the parents again. You know what I mean? You cannot always keep on top of what your children do. But at the same time, you can always enforce these traditions, like what Brother Raven put on with the Israeli The Israeli, it may seem extreme to a lot of people, but the Israeli have a strategy, right? Is that they just want to keep white Israeli. They don't want to mix. They don't want to alter it. They just want to keep it that way. And in order for them to keep it that way, it may seem extreme, but they will go to lengths to keep that bloodline white and Jewish. Now, this is a strategy where a lot of us will say, well, ooh, I can't do that because it's racism and it's evil, but they want to preserve their race. Do we want to preserve our race? Are we willing to go to extreme levels to do the same thing? We have to ask ourselves that question.
Well, you know, when you look at this page, Ray, when going down this page as well, it's actually the only example I can see of a black woman with a white man. If you go right the way down the page, it's all like black couples. So I think it says it was the anniversary, so it's not like they're doing it regular, you know.
Yeah, I agree. I mentioned that, but one thing that I'm trying to push is consistencies and themes, and that's why I gave the analogy of in veganism, if you had one post of how best to kill a duck, it would cause major confusion, even though it's just one post, because the concept is to not kill any animals. I think Black Betterment, and especially when you have black themed stuff, if the concept is black man for black woman, then once again you might contribute to confusion.
But Raven, okay, so let me play devil's advocate in what you're saying, because quite a few black men say this. So, for example, I've come across black men that believe that their seed is black. So whoever they have a child with, their seed is black. So their child is black, i.e. the one-drop rule. But then the issues, so basically they will see their family as a black family, even if their partner isn't black, because the child is black, because the black gene is dominant. Yeah. So they don't see it. So they don't need a black woman to create a black child, because the black gene is dominant. So what do you say about that? Because if the black community, and this is like, for example, in America, and obviously then how the racist and white supremacists see it, that, you know, a child born of a black and white union is black. Yeah.
Right. Well, let me answer that. So I think we always have to do things that work in an empowerment way, and we always have to go from who is most oppressed upwards, right? So and we also have to highlight responsibility. You know, the black man's responsibility is the black woman, and the black woman's responsibility is the black man. We understand this because when slavery was about, or colonization was about, these were the two groups we turned to. When those things have been pushed down, we seem to forget that. Now, in the concept of black men and, you know, finding love and their child is black, the problem with that is it's almost like a concept where, you know, let's create a scenario where unfortunately a man is born through rape, which is unfortunate. You know, but let's say that man goes on to be the world's greatest scientist who invents all the greatest apps. It's almost like we said, well, you know what, because he was born through rape, let's try to keep that going. It's like, what the idea is, you're meant to make good of an unideal situation. Now, if black people are going through collective hardship and have a history of pain, the most ideal solution is to find solace within yourself, within your group. So that has to be the primary. Now, if people find love elsewhere, that's their, you know, that's their life and their situation, right? But what we can't do is benchmark rebrand, where we start having philosophies that make these concepts favorable. You see, because how using the sermon, how do I know that you're with this non-black person because generally she's an angel from the sky and God loves her and you, or you're practicing low self-esteem and you hate yourself? How do I know? Because the outcome seems to be the same historically. Does that make sense, Mr. Beck?
You know what? Like, in terms of, I think you may have misunderstood what I'm trying to say. The way they're going to say it, and this is the way people say it, for some people, is that if the child is considered black, what is the importance of black love? As we see with Obama, that if black is no longer black, and a white person can also create black with a black person, what is the importance of black love? If the black person, like Obama, he's just actually brown, yeah. If he is put on the same pedestal as someone that came from two black people, what is the importance of black love? You can, because the way they see it is, well, the child's going to be black anyway. The one drop rule.
Well,
what's the importance of it?
And that is a very good point to this debate. And there's communities out there who are trying to redefine black things politically because of these concepts. And the way I would see it is, it's kind of why I bring up the concept of racial whitening. Historically, interracial, and I've put on the screen, interracial courtship and this kind of stuff was done to undermine and belittle and depower black people economically, and regardless of what generation happens or which kind of European country, it was consistent throughout. And just like the concept of white people call black people niggers, and then they stopped and the black people carried on. Using this sermon, I don't see any difference between whether the white people are trying to do it for a political extermination means, or black people believe that they've got the magical seed that makes black people. It seems to me the outcome is the same, that black people are collectively inadequate and don't have anything to their name. Yeah, so we have to go, like Brother Kel saying, look at ancient things that have worked in black people's benefit and go there. And if you identify as a black community, there's no way you can tell me you can take the woman of another group and try to live amongst and with and have an economic structure that's going to work for your family or better your community. It hasn't been practiced yet. But this is part of the solution, or the conclusion, I should say, sorry, that black people are collectively inadequate because these conversations do not exist in other community groups. So out of kindness, I will say this, yeah, historically, black people were raped and brought tried to people who were of mixed origin, defined, and they were part of the black community, and they were very constructive and helped in many situations. Within these contexts, we say this is the black community because we're in the same boat, same phenotype, same this kind of stuff, right? And we knew better that the best thing to do is work with those people who are trying to improve the situation. Now, in the future sense or the current sense, to just say, well, I'm going to go out, I'm going to be with a European, and they're going to have a child, and then my child's going to be with a European, and their child's going to be and we're going to call them black. The reason why this is problematic is when we look at, say, in America on the reservation land with the Native Indians, you have Europeans who call themselves Indians, and maybe they are, I'm not to judge, who are controlling many kind of lands and stuff because of this concept of what I identify as historical racial whitening. So this is the okie doke that black people always seem to fall for. So if I was to meet a person who openly says I marry non-black people because I make black people with them, I would have to present this to them, and at a certain point I have to try to undermine the ideology very consistently, and say that they are actually collectively inadequate, and they have to just fall back until they can give us anything constructive that their racial whitening has produced for black people.
You know what, Brother Raven, right? Sorry. You know what, right? Was that sister? You want to say something?
Yeah, I was going to say, just tailing off of what Brother Raven was saying. It's funny because this conversation can go in so many different angles, but focusing on what you've just said, if you look at it from the perspective of the non-black person, like if we look at the continent, you'll have other races wanting to marry in so that they could have rights to land. So they'll marry the matriarchal side. They'll marry the woman,
yes,
the female, so they can have access to land, access to political maneuvering. It just gives them access. The same as the Caribbean. You find non-blacks marrying in to the woman so that they can have these rights. So that's that we can kind of touch on. But then there's another thing which is quite seedy, and that is sex tourism, which I think isn't discussed in its depth either. And that is where you have non-blacks going to countries. I think you actually did something about this a few months ago, Bob Raven. Correct me if I'm wrong, but you've got non-blacks going to the continent, or even to places where people may be like black people may be economically disadvantaged, for example, going with their European wealth, and that is what is attracting our men, mainly our men, to these even sometimes older women who might be in their 70s, 80s.
Oh yes, very true.
So there's that as well, and this is kind of taking away the whole concept of how we respect each other, how the kind of the vested interest that we have in each other as a mirror, male female kind of mirroring and stuff, because there's always a distraction and there's always something that is just competing and vying for our attention, and if we're not focused, then we can do you know what I mean, that we're privy to tailing off, because the carrot is being dangled, whether it's through wealth, whether it's through benefits or whatever it is, but we still collectively remain the bottom of the pile. Yes. So is it really benefiting us, really?
Well, I'm glad you said that, and others can jump in obviously when I say this. This is the technology that black people fall from. We will always give the fantasy kind of outcome about, integration and kind of stuff, but the final question I always ask is, how is that working for black people? And usually not so much, because black people are, and I want people to challenge me. I want to be on TV. I want people to cry and throw chairs. Black people are collectively inadequate, really, and only once. And this is what I'm pushing, and I think it's necessary. Only once we sit around and have these conversations, can we actually find solutions? Because as Sister Betty says, there'll be some men who says, no, I will go with as many non-black women as possible and have children. They're all black. And I say, yes, this is the act and the mindset of a collectively inadequate person. You see? And this is what I'm saying, you're proving my point. And every time someone says, this is bad, this is all this kind of stuff, I go, yes, but we're collectively inadequate. And because we're collectively inadequate, that's why we have to be serious. And that's why we have to actually have dedicated codes of conduct that are formulated in guaranteeing our betterment through every step of the way. And unfortunately, everything we've said, you talk about Europeans colonizing Africa, colonizing the Caribbean, taking resources, taking this stuff, marketing themselves as beautiful, and then having their old people, women or whatever it might be, going to the Caribbean and having all the men, literally fighting themselves to be with them for, $5 here, $10 here, this kind of stuff. This is what I'm saying. This is a dominated people who have specialized in subservience, and it isn't directly black people's fault. I can't say that, no, but when you recognize there's a shortcoming, the diffusion class has to come together to work on solutions. And the solution I'm saying is, as a collective, we should identify, I think it's in our best interest, that black love is between a black person, people who are registered as black legally, people who have biologically, historically have that lineage, black love. Anything else is collectively inadequate and will, remember the word, will work against black people, because we are collectively inadequate. You see, if you want to know who is collectively adequate, look at the other people groups. I've showed you a video of the Jews. I can show you a video of the Chinese. I can show you a video of every single people group. Black people have been trained to be subservient very well. And this is what upsets me most about the interactions between black people and other people, is black people can't stand back and round of applaud the white supremacists who put you in a situation, because the white supremacists have made sheep out of sheep. They have made sheep follow sheep. Literally, you don't need a sheep herder. You can literally give a programming and black people will do it. That is why we will fight for the right to call each other niggers. Let's fight for that right, you see? Let's fight for the right to have a page called Black Love and put white people on it. Let's fight for that right. Let's not fight for economic empowerment, fixing black issues, getting self-esteem boosts, getting businesses, schools. No. Let us fight for Europeans to be within a social page. So this is the collectively inadequacy I talk about, and hopefully someone somewhere, because I might not have the know-how or the skill set, but someone will hear this and they will have better answers than me to try to make sure that black people become collectively adequate. You see? Hopefully.
You know, Brother Raven, right? When it comes to the situation with the mixed race, right? The Honorable Marcus Garvey, he made it clear in his writing that the black man has no business planting seed in non-African soil, and the black woman has no business allowing non-black seed to be planted in her soil. We understand, brother, that there are biracial Africans, right? And they've always been biracial Africans.
Yes.
But the thing is, what the Honorable Marcus Garvey made clear, and it's something which you put there about black racial blackening, is that you have to pan-Africanize those biracial Africans. You see, people like to say, oh, they're not black and things like that. But in UK, right, there was a time that if you was the complexion of Mariah Carey, you weren't even allowed to be buried in a European cemetery. This is all facts in London, all around. You weren't allowed. It was the same thing in America as well. You was not allowed to be buried in their cemetery. Do you understand? So when it comes to the biracial Africans, right, is that they have to pan-Africanize their mind, right, and marry the biracial Africans. However, right, we have to be understand the situation is that you cannot keep attacking them, because a lot of the Pan-Africanists, Brother Raven, I don't know if you're aware or not, a lot of them were biracial. Nat Turner was a biracial African.
Of course.
Fred Douglass was. You know what I mean? Bishop Henry Miller Turner, a lot of them, brother, and a lot of them they came down with the struggle. But the problem is, brother, is that we want to keep analyzing their mixed race, right? Their complexion is genetically dominant. It's the mindset. It's the problem. You know what I mean? And it's the same thing with a lot of us non-biracial Africans, but we have that same. Some of us, brother, we don't even have European parents, and we behave the way how the biracial Africans behave.
Yeah.
When it comes to,
let me jump in and say that, as usual, you're giving supreme wisdom. This is good stuff. And just to be clear on my standpoint, at no point have I ever even mentioned biracial at all in anything I'm personally saying. I'm talking about a black person with a white person or a non-black person, and I've never included that non-synchronized, that so-called mixed race person as not part of the black collective. And you know, there's been many Pan-Africans and many black people, biracial, so-called biracial people in the struggle, and historically and today I still refer to them as black people. There's no reason for me to think otherwise. But what you're saying is correct, right? In the sense of, there are people who are actually so-called fully black, but their behavioral patterns is that of destructive towards the black betterment. And there are people who are so-called biracial who have done so much for black betterment. So in these contexts, I don't speak. Once again, when it comes to the so-called biracial concept, I'm not talking to biracial offspring. I'm talking to a black parent, whoever that might be identified as, with a non-black person. Does that make sense, Brother Cal?
That makes perfect sense.
And can I ask a question? I'm going to respectfully disagree, because I'm getting confused. What are you trying to protect? Are you trying to protect black culture, the black community, or are you trying to protect the black genetics?
Or co-education.
If you have a mixed race person in, you're bringing in a non-black African genetics, and you say that you're trying to protect the black community, but that mixed race person is going to bring in non-black African genetics. So what is it? Is it just the culture you're trying to protect? Because the black culture is out of the black community anyway, as well. Or are you trying to protect the genetics? What are you actually trying to protect if it doesn't matter if the mixed race, and this idea that mixed race people have done more for black people than actual black people? Yeah,
no, I don't think anyone said
that. The majority of Africa is black. How can mixed race people have done more than the majority of black people for their own existence?
But you know, Sister Betty, sorry, let me just come in here. Like the continent, in most respects, you can say that, and there are indigenous tribes who have maintained that line and continue to do so, or remote tribes, should I say. But with the with the Arab slavery, the transatlantic slavery, the Arab slavery being around the Byzantine Empire, the transatlantic, there has been mixes within. So as much as we're talking about purification of the bloodlines and stuff, the bloodlines have been mixed, and some can't even trace where these mixes have come about and stuff. And some people go by the lightness of one's skin to say, oh, like as Tupac said, the darker the berry, the sweeter the juice, the darker the flesh, then the deeper the roots. So, in face value, you know, you say, oh, the darker person, you know, has a deeper, bloodline, but in families there are many different complexions and many different tonages of black. So if you were to have met a dark-skinned person and not the rest of their family, you would assume that. But if you were to say,
I'm not talking about complexions of black people.
You're talking about the mixing
listen carefully to what I'm saying. Yeah, complexions and the bloodline are two different things. Are you just
example
the black DNA? Or are you trying to collect the culture? Because a mixed race person brings in a different genetics, and with that mixed race person comes a different culture.
The reason why I disagree.
The black culture. So which one is more important? Is it just the cultural experience, or is it just the DNA? Which one is important?
Every African tribe, Sister Bay, does not just have one ethnicity in them. The Benin community, Sister Betty, right? That's not just one tribe. That was a collection of tribes. It's the same thing with East Africa, North Africa, South and Central. This is why it's very tricky, because nobody, right, is just one tribe. You know what I mean? And that's why I say when it comes to the biracial Africans and that, I agree with you, Sister Betty, that we should not be mixing with the non-African people. I totally agree with that. You know what I mean? We shouldn't be in Sufra. You know what I mean? But at the same time, right, they are biracial Africans, right, who when you see them, they have the genetical dominant gene, and they are in it's like an operable triangle, should I say, in that. It's like they don't know where to go. So that's why the Honorable Marcus Garvey says, just like in ancient African time, you have to pan-Africanize them. You know what I mean? Just like with the
So you're not trying to protect the black genetics then?
I am trying
that's all I wanted to answer.
But
you're not trying to protect the black genetics. What you're trying to do is protect the culture.
Yeah, I mean, I think it works in different kind of ordership, right? So you have to understand that I think from a transatlantic standpoint, unfortunately, there was much abominations that happened, and people go on with it, and there was mixing going on, and obviously in that time this was not choice mixing, which is a very different thing. So already within that context, you have already some kind of mixing going on, and new cultures were formed, and that was a culture of survival and moving forward. It is very different from, I guess, today where people have choices in who they mix with and this kind of stuff, right? But I think what Brother Carr was saying is, idealistically, we want black people to dedicate their time and effort with other black people. But if you do find a biracial person who is synchronized, they want to better black people collectively, then working with them is a beneficial concept. I don't think I've ever necessarily spoke more so about. I've talked about lineage. So lineage is also a part of it as well. So, you know, a biracial person is still descended from Africa on some kind of close level because their parent is. So they have a close lineage. So these are the things. It really is a tricky predicament, Sister Bay, and these are like political ways to try to form codes of conduct to better the collective. And I guess if racial whitening was used to destroy black people, then the concept of racial blackening could be one that could use to bring black people back. So that's why I say going around black people telling, black people go and be with other people, this is not constructive, and this is actually working against your betterment, because we know the history was to destroy this kind of way. But saying that we have a way to return back to the essence culturally and biologically, and it is a concept of racial blackening, as long as we're not practicing favoritism or mistreatment or anything like that. This is one solution to the potential problem that we have, if that makes any sense, sister.
Well, it's interesting that you said racial whitening, because racial whitening, that's what a mixed race person is doing in the black community. They're lightening up the black race. They're they're watering down the black genetics. So it's interesting that you created, you mentioned that term, because they were called the buffer class. They were there in order to create children with divided loyalties that will create an enemy within. And they were in Africa, they were used to they were trained quite often by their colonial fathers to maintain the country once their colonial fathers had gone away. There's one or two countries in West Africa like that, like the country of Sierra Leone. Yeah. But for me, quite often I hear this. This is why quite a few people have given up on this black love and this blackness, because quite often people are more often wanting to keep the culture going than trying to keep the genetics without any interference. Yeah, and they're separating the culture, and the genetics. So the culture is more important. It doesn't matter if the person is not just black and they're actually white, as long as we keep our culture. That is important. Yeah. A mixed race person, doesn't just have black culture though, does it? Because you can't ignore someone's genetics, 50% of the genetics, and all these random ethnic groups in Africa, like the Benin. There's like 2,000 ethnic groups in Africa. One random group called the Benin don't even count for even 50% of Nigeria, let alone to represent the whole of Black Africa. So it's a moot point. But to me, I'm glad that you've mentioned it now, because this is why I'm starting to veer away from it. Because to me, it sounds like a lot of people, they're not down for this thing that they call black community or black love. Yeah. What they want is just like a little rainbow nation. Yeah. People don't want to be black. People want to, it sounds like, just so good what Kale said. He said, people as light as Mariah Carey, that damn right looks like a white woman, with curly hair. She wasn't allowed to get buried in the graveyard because of some racist white folk. So does that mean that black people need to come and rescue this Mariah Carey girl because white people didn't want to accept her? So it's like, it sounds like you want black people to play Captain Save a Hoe.
No, what I was saying
mixed race people. And for me, I'm down for that.
What I was saying was, sister, is that right? Is that there's no such thing as 50-50. The African gene dominates. This is why, for example, there's a Professor Mendel, who was born in the late 1800s, and he was a white supremacist. And he specifically made it clear, due to evidence, that he says dark skin is dominant, light skin is recessive, dark eyes are dominant, light eyes are recessive. It says you can get the recessive from the dominant, but you can't get the dominant from the recessive. When you look at the biracial African people, right, is that they have that genetically dominant gene. The Europeans understand that very well, which is why they use certain code of conducts to use them to whiten out the whole race, to use them to protect Europeans. Remember, this is the bit. I got a question for you. Why isn't white people called mixed race? That's what I want you to explain to me. Why aren't white people, whether they're in Australia, Europe, America, why are they not called mixed race?
Well, unfortunately, Sister Betty's connection has gone on. She's cut off, which is fine. And you know, and these are very passionate topics. And remember, the passion that these things bring, you know, you've seen the history of it. And the one thing that I try to look in between some of the questioning, and I think you got most of this kind of disagreements more so, like Sister Betty was saying, when the buffer class was developed, and also where you had Europeans favoring maybe people of mixed origin, so-called mixed origin, and placing them in places, and then obviously when black men started having preferences. So these kinds of behaviors have brought people to push back, and it is you know, it is challenging. And I guess you have to have the fusion class coming up with ways of operating, right?
But Raven, why aren't they called mixed? Why aren't white people? Maybe you can answer this question. Why aren't white people, brother? Because we know why aren't white people called mixed race? And why do they never call themselves that? That's my question to you, my brother.
Well, because white supremacy and white people, they are in power. They're defining, and their idea is to maintain power no matter what. And they understand that courtship and marriage are ways of losing power. So they have a very defined sense of making sure that they never lose power. And also, unfortunately for the Europeans, because their genes are so recessive, it's very easy for someone to tell when they've been with someone else. With many other people groups, it's not as easy. So because of all these kind of factions, they've had to develop certain ways of maintaining power. And that was one of them. And like I said, this is a very the concept of miscegenation and the biracial offspring and the legacy of it. These are very, very challenging concepts. And unfortunately, the reason why I use the term black as well when I'm talking is because yes, I am talking about political. I am talking about political black as well as the biological black. And you know, you have to have a rule set, and that's why I feel that, you know, if a mixed person it goes with a European, whatever, I'm silent on this issue. I can't say nothing because their fathers have already started the process of racial whitening. I'm free from this. I can't say nothing, right? And my job is to always try to make black people love black and move black. But if a person who has a black father who has been brought up in Pan-Africanism or a black Betterment, a B1, whatever it is, wants to then go into the black community and try to, you know, support and this kind of stuff, and well, I can't say no. Like there are still philosophies out there where it allows people to do that, and technically so-called mixed people were called Negro, they were called black. And this is the challenge of managing so many different concepts and ideas. And sometimes with some people, you have to go backwards to go forward. You realize that how I maneuver is I'm not overly passionate about anything. I'm just consistent, see? And that's why I push myself in the fusion class, where I have to make regulations and rules based upon the collective benefit. And sometimes people will not be best pleased with the decisions, but a lot of this stuff comes from a historical concept. And I'm a fond believer and reader of old rules, and I use these old rules and laws to try to form new ones. So racial blackening is something that supports the concept of black people finding black people, and people who are mixed black can practice that as well. Like I said, if a person phenotypically is from Sudan and they love their phenotypical features, I support that. Well done. You will find that if they do end up with a so-called mixed black person, after that mixed black person is with them, and then with one more Sunnis person, that person will pretty much look almost identical to the Sunnis person. So it's like to say that you know, you cannot return to the same phenotype, and because if that's what you're searching for, I don't know. But once again, being part of the fusion class of black people, I have to come up with rules and ways of regulating, and that's what we push forward. But this is a public forum, and people can have their ideas and their stories and push things forward, and we can always debate and see the logic between every single one.
Can I just quickly just add in like the fear factor that has been placed upon the black psyche and our psychological frame also, and neurological. There's been a lot of fear that has been placed upon us for centuries, and for me, I believe that in this century they've been very, very skilled in the digital age in projecting something else, and to some extent that has, and also integration has as well, because obviously it's racism is less overt, isn't it? It's there, but it's less overt in this country anyway.
Yes.
But I think that before there was a fear of survival for us, and that kept us together. Whereas, as you know, we've kind of gone through this digital age, that it's more kind of a lifestyle and a luxury effect, and I think people have bought into that. So it's caused like curiosity to kind of it's just things have just gone crazy, and people are very, very curious, and people are very much being influenced by pornography and all of these things. Not saying that they weren't around before, but it's the imagery that people are receiving and storing, and then projecting that in their day-to-day lives. And I think that is destructive. The Jerry Springer age, the pornography age, do you know what I mean? A lot of destructive things is destroying our perception of self, our self-preservation, etc., etc. And I think that has a strong influence to do with why we're not, kind of internally and holistically settled either, or we are not grown up enough to make grown-up decisions because we're so distracted.
But Sister Rain, right? Brother Raven showed a video, and the video had like the Jewish community, right? They implemented a strategy where they felt like we want to preserve our race, and they were using certain methods that many people will find extreme, right? But they were using it to preserve their race. What I've noticed with us as African people, right, and we're to blame for this, we celebrate interracial relationships. We do all the time. We celebrate it. We watch the programs. We're scared to tell our children to commit to the black woman or the black man in the African way. We are scared to do these things. And we use these things, what Brother Raven's saying or displaying in the media and that, as intervention to prevent the responsibility. You know what I mean? How are we going to stop these things when we're scared to even, order the good, forbade the bad? We're really scared of doing it. And then when we pre-create biracial Africans, right, then we want to blame them. This is where I disagree with. You want to blame the biracial Africans, right, for something which we've done forward. You know what I mean? So I hear where you're coming from, like the lifestyle. Or you can go to a mindset, and it may seem extreme, where you can say to yourself, right, you can practice certain laws which the Jewish community practice. I want to preserve my race. And are you willing enough or alpha enough to implement those traditions?
So, family, if we look at the image here, like what the mindset of black people is very important. So let's just say, like I said, I always give the example of, when you talk to a person who's got a non-black partner, they will always give you a story of like, I was on an island and an angel came from the heavens and they gave me gold and honey and all the great story. And I'm going to agree. I'm going to say, yes, the issue I have is the benchmark rebranding. When you start celebrating concepts like, let's celebrate the fact that black people can marry white people, I don't think that's a good message to have. Like there is other things that the black people need that is more worthy of celebration, you see? And I was challenging, where is the Jewish person after the war who said we must celebrate that now Jews can marry Germans? It doesn't exist. Yeah, but Jews will marry Germans, and they will be on the island, and honey will fall from the sky, and the Jewish woman will come down, and he'll go, yes, the Jewish is the perfect man for the German, whatever. But they don't have a branding concept. You don't go into Jewish love and see Germans with Jews and this kind of stuff. It just won't happen. Because black people are collectively inadequate, this is what happens. And we find ourselves in a very cultural compromising position, and we're trying to pick up the pieces. And in those pieces, we are going to find people of different heritage who find themselves in the black community. And you know, their actions will determine where they go. If they decide to go one way and they become more Europeanized, then they're free from any kind of betterment that we can practice, because we can't work with that. But if you know they want to come in and do this kind of stuff, then yeah. But it is a tricky question, and I definitely look forward to people jumping in. And we are at the end of the show, family. It has been a good week, and I do say that if you've got topics people want to say, come in. I'm looking forward to talking to misogynists and people who practice misogyny, and they want to benchmark rebrand for black people and say this is the perfect way for black people to progress. You're welcome to come on so I can debate you. Also, those in the same gender loving community, I would like to invite you guys over. So in the practice of miscegenation and homosexuality, if you could define to me from a black Bremer standpoint, what is a high principle behavior in that culture, just so I can make notes, because I'm unaware at the moment, and we can have that discussion. But until then, do you, Brother Carl and Sister Rain, and thank you for Sister Betty who dropped some jewels here today. Do you have any last notes for the people listening?
Yeah, the Honorable Marcus Garvey says, you know, you need your culture, your economics, and your politics, and it must be African agenda, you know. And I suppose the culture typifies the African woman and the African man, traditional marriage that will help prevail against adversaries that are attacking us every single day.
Sister Ray?
Well, there's obviously a disconnect, and yeah, personally speaking, I believe that if you are for black betterment, then you will eventually achieve black betterment in whichever way or form that is. But I do also believe that there are a plethora of issues that need to be addressed. And I think we touched on quite a few of them tonight. Yeah, and there just needs to be more intellect and more understanding, I think, so that we can deal with the psychological reasons as to why particular choices are made, but then also understanding that there is also a competition out there for the survival of race, for example. So you'll have people vying for the most forthcoming and productive sperm at whatever the cost, because they value the survival of their race. And I'll leave it as broad as that.
Thank you, sister. So everyone at home, I hope, thanks for tuning in, and for the future listeners, thanks for listening. Let's like to thank all the contributions, Sister Bay, Sister Rain, and obviously Brother Cal. And remember, black people unfortunately are collectively inadequate, and the solution I'm pushing forward is black betterment, the lifestyle. Tune in next week, same time, Friday. Any topics you want to hear, let me know. We'll bring it up. It's for you. It's for the community base. Thank you and goodbye, everyone. Oh yeah, end broadcast.